At my sister's wedding, I was seated with my ex, the one who cheated on me. So I did the unthinkable. I walked out. And what happened next? It shocked everyone, including me. I've always been the one who held it together for everyone else. Olivia Bennett, the oldest sister, the responsible one, the one who was always there when my younger sister Emma needed something. Always invisible in the background, watching as my mother coddled Emma, her golden child. I didn't mind at first. I took care of everything. The bills, the meals, the family drama. But as time passed, I started to realize that I was losing myself in it all. The final blow came just 3 weeks before Emma's wedding. I discovered that the seating arrangement for the reception placed me at table 14, right next to Derek and Jessica, my ex-fiancé and the woman he cheated on me with. When I confronted Emma, I expected at least a little understanding, maybe a little empathy. Instead, I got an eye roll. "You're being dramatic," she said. My mother, of course, backed her up. "Just be the bigger person," she said. I was tired of being overlooked, tired of being invisible. But I showed up anyway. I did what I always do, put on a smile, played the role of the perfect maid of honor, even though it felt like I was suffocating. But when I sat down at that table, with Derek and Jessica already there, I realized something. My family, they didn't see me. Not really. I had a choice. Stay and let them treat me like a doormat, or finally stand up for myself. And in that moment, I knew I had to choose me. What happened next? Well, that's where everything changed. If you want to know how this story ends, hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss what happens next. I've always been the one to hold it all together, even when it felt like I was falling apart inside. Growing up after Dad passed when I was 12, I became the rock. My mother, Linda, overwhelmed by grief, leaned on me to take care of everything. The bills, the house, my sister Emma. Emma, younger and spoiled, had always been the golden child. While I was doing everything to keep our lives together, she got the attention, the love, the freedom to be selfish. I didn't mind at first. I didn't mind taking on the responsibility. It's what a big sister does, right? But as the years went by, I started to notice something I couldn't ignore anymore. Emma, who always seemed to get what she wanted, never saw the sacrifices I made. And that hurt. I had a career, a fiancé, a life of my own, or so I thought. Then came Derek. He was perfect, or so I thought. We were together for 4 years, planning a future. But when I found out about him and Jessica, everything crumbled. One evening, I stumbled upon a text, just a casual message, but enough to shatter everything. "I can't wait to see you tonight. I miss you, love." It was from Derek to Jessica. It wasn't the first time I caught wind of something, but this time, I knew. I confronted him that night. "Derek, what is this?" I asked, showing him the message. His face turned pale. "Olivia, I'm sorry," he stammered, eyes avoiding mine. "I never meant for it to happen. It was just one mistake." One mistake? It wasn't just one mistake. He'd been lying for months. I walked away, feeling my heart rip apart. How could he betray me like that? I didn't just lose my fiancé, I lost my trust in everyone. And the worst part? Emma, my sister, who I'd always put first, was still hanging out with Derek. They had become friends again, like nothing had happened. She didn't care how much it hurt me. "Olivia, you're being dramatic," Emma had said when I confronted her about it. "You need to move on. It's not that big of a deal." And there it was. She didn't get it. She never did. I could never rely on her to understand me. And in that moment, it hit me. Emma would always choose Derek and Jessica over me, no matter what I did. I was still trying to recover from the heartbreak, still trying to keep my life together. But the thought of facing Derek at Emma's wedding, it felt like more than I could handle. Yet there I was. 3 weeks before the wedding, Emma still made me the maid of honor, and I was expected to show up, to be the dutiful sister, no matter the pain. "Just be there for me," she said, oblivious to the fact that I was the one paying the emotional price for her day. But how could I say no? How could I let her down? I was her sister, her maid of honor. So I put my feelings aside, buried the hurt, and agreed. But deep down, I knew things would never be the same again. As I prepared for the wedding, I couldn't help but feel torn between my duty to Emma and the growing resentment toward her. Would she ever see me? Would she ever see the weight I carried all these years? As the wedding drew closer, my investment in Emma's big day went beyond the emotional toll. It became financial. I put everything I had into this wedding, and it seemed like no one even noticed. $5,000 for the venue deposit, $2,100 for the bridesmaid dresses, and $1,800 for the bridal shower, and countless hours spent organizing everything. I was stretched thin, trying to juggle my career, my heartache, and my family's expectations. Emma? She didn't even blink an eye. She was too busy with her influencer career posting pictures from the bridal fittings, but never once acknowledging the sacrifices I was making. "You look amazing, Emma," I'd say, holding back the frustration, but all I got in return was a distracted smile and a, "Thanks, sis." There was no appreciation, not even a hint of recognition. I was giving everything, but it felt like I was invisible. The real shock came when I saw the seating arrangement. 3 weeks before the wedding, I was handed my place card, table 14 in the back corner near the kitchen doors. As if that wasn't bad enough, I noticed Derek and Jessica were already seated there. I stared at the seating chart, disbelief sinking in. After everything that had happened, after everything Derek had done to me, my sister was forcing me to sit with them. It felt like salt in an open wound. I had tried to move on, to heal, but Emma was making it impossible. The anger built up in my chest. "Emma," I said, trying to keep my voice steady as I confronted her, "why am I seated with Derek and Jessica?" She barely looked up from her phone. "Oh, you're being dramatic, Olivia. It's just a seating arrangement." She didn't seem to care how much that arrangement hurt me. She waved it off like it was nothing. "I don't think it's that simple, Emma," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can't sit with them. It's too much." Emma rolled her eyes, the expression one I'd grown so used to over the years. "Just be the bigger person, okay? It's my wedding day. Don't ruin it over something this small." She brushed me off like it was nothing. But to me, it wasn't nothing. It was everything. The one time I needed support. The one time I needed my sister to understand, and she chose to disregard my feelings. The anger inside me boiled over, but I knew I had to keep my composure. If I didn't, I'd be the one to look like the villain. I turned to my mother, hoping she would back me up. But instead, Linda, as usual, sided with Emma. "She's right, Olivia," my mother said, the words stinging more than I expected. "You should just let it go. Emma's been through a lot. It's her big day." Her voice was gentle but firm, and I could feel the weight of years of being the one to clean up everyone else's mess pressing down on me. I was always the responsible one, the one who took on the burdens. But now, I was being asked to swallow my pain for the sake of family harmony. It wasn't fair, but I knew better than to argue. I was used to being dismissed, used to being invisible. But this time, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let it slide this time. I just had to survive the wedding. I had to endure the humiliation, the injustice, for the sake of keeping the peace. But in the back of my mind, I knew something had to change. I couldn't keep doing this, sacrificing myself for a family that didn't even see me. The question was, how long could I keep pretending? The ceremony was a blur. I moved through it, a perfectly orchestrated role, the maid of honor who smiled for every photo, adjusted the veil, and held the bouquet with perfect precision. No one could see the emotional toll it was taking on me. I watched Emma, radiant, glowing in the center of everything, her eyes always seeking the next compliment, the next moment to shine. It hurt, more than I cared to admit. As the guests applauded her, I stood beside her, always the support, never the focus. The weight of the years of unnoticed sacrifice pressed down on me, but I smiled. I had to. This was her day after all, but as the reception began and I finally took my seat at table 14, the emotional drain was almost too much to bear. I could feel the eyes of the room, unaware, but I was acutely aware of the isolation. Derek and Jessica sat across from me, talking in hushed tones, like nothing had ever happened between us. Jessica even flashed a smile as if to say, "Everything's fine now." My heart sank deeper into my chest. It wasn't just the awkwardness of sitting with them. It was the realization that everyone else was having the time of their lives. Emma was getting all the attention, all the love, while I was left to quietly watch the world move on without me. The laughter, the cheers, the toasts, none of it felt real. My sister's wedding had become a painful reminder of how invisible I was to the people who should have cared the most. It was unbearable. Derek looked at me briefly, but his eyes were cold, distant, like he was just going through the motions. It was a slap in the face. I was stuck in that corner, a forgotten guest at my sister's celebration, while she danced in the spotlight, oblivious to how I was suffering. My thoughts raced, but I couldn't even find the words to express how wrong everything felt. How could Emma do this to me? How could my mother, my own mother, let this happen? I looked at the others around the table, but it felt like I was looking through a glass, disconnected from the world. My stomach churned as I watched Emma's first dance with her new husband. I could see her beaming, looking up at him, lost in the moment. She was the picture of happiness. But all I could feel was the gnawing emptiness that had built up in me for years. My heart was heavy. I wanted to scream. I wanted to leave, but I stayed. I had to. I had to keep up the act. I had to pretend. But then, as the night wore on, something inside me snapped. I had been so strong for so long, but enough was enough. I wasn't going to keep being the person everyone walked on. I stood up from the table, my hand gripping my clutch, and in that moment everything around me seemed to slow down. The room, the music, the chatter, it all blurred. As I turned, I could feel the eyes of the room on me. I didn't even look back. I didn't want to see the looks of confusion or worse, the judgment. All I knew was that I couldn't stay there, not for one more minute. The silence in the room followed me as I walked out, leaving my sister's wedding in chaos. Everyone was still caught up in their own world, unaware of the storm that had just passed through. But for me, it was the moment everything changed. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I couldn't go back to the way things were. The question now was whether they would even care. Would they notice? Would they understand? Or would they just move on like they always did, leaving me behind once again? The moment I walked out of that reception, I had no idea what was about to unfold. I didn't look back. I couldn't. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I was almost numb. I didn't hear the gasps, the whispers, or the shuffling of feet. I didn't know that Emma, Derek, and Jessica hadn't even bothered to notice. They didn't care. Not really. As the evening went on, the rest of the family started to notice my absence. "Where's Olivia?" my aunt asked, frowning as she looked around the room. But the questions didn't last long. People were more focused on the wedding, on Emma and her perfect day. But there was one person who didn't let it slide, Brandon. Brandon, Emma's fiancé, was different. He wasn't caught up in the show of it all. As he stood beside Emma, laughing with the guests, he caught sight of me walking out. His eyes narrowed in confusion. "Where's Olivia going?" he asked quietly. Emma, a forced smile still on her face, shrugged it off. "Oh, she's just being dramatic. It's nothing." But Brandon, not convinced, began to press. He pulled up the seating chart, eyes scanning it quickly, and that's when he saw it. The deliberate seating arrangement. Not just my place at table 14, but the way Emma had orchestrated it, placing me next to Derek and Jessica like I was nothing. It didn't sit right with him. "Emma, why did you do this?" he asked, his voice low but firm. Emma's face faltered for just a second, but she quickly masked it with a shrug. "I just thought it would be funny. She'll get over it," she said, dismissing it as if it was some small, insignificant detail. But to Brandon, this wasn't just a seating arrangement. It was a sign of something much bigger, something manipulative. Brandon didn't stop there. He began to dig deeper. The more he asked, the more he uncovered. It wasn't just the seating. Emma had lied about my financial contributions to the wedding, the $5,000, the $2,100, the $2,800. I'd paid for all of it while Emma had told him and his family that I was struggling financially. That lie had been carefully crafted to manipulate not only the wedding, but also the generosity of Brandon's parents, who had given Emma and him $15,000, believing they were helping out a family in need. Brandon's expression turned cold as the truth sank in. He stormed over to Emma, confronting her in front of the guests. "Why would you do this?" he demanded, his voice rising. Emma was caught. She tried to shrug it off, but the weight of her lies was starting to crush her. She couldn't talk her way out of this one. "It's not a big deal, Brandon. I had to balance things for the photos," she said weakly, but her justification didn't hold up. "You lied to me. You lied to everyone," he said, his voice shaking with frustration. That was when the mask really started to crack. Emma had built this entire perfect wedding narrative, and it was all falling apart in front of her. Meanwhile, my departure had begun to reverberate through the wedding. Guests who had witnessed the awkwardness at table 14 started whispering. The tension was thick, and Emma's carefully curated image was starting to crumble. As people began asking questions about me, Emma's carefully constructed narrative faltered. She quickly attempted damage control, taking to social media to issue a half-hearted apology. "To anyone I may have hurt, I'm sorry you felt that way," she wrote in a post, her words dripping with the kind of insincerity that anyone with half a brain could see through. Her followers, who had once adored her perfect life, weren't buying it. The comments came flooding in. "You've got to be kidding me," one person wrote. "This isn't an apology. This is a joke." Another commented, "If you really cared, you wouldn't have treated your sister like that." The damage was done. Emma's attempt to smooth things over only made it worse. The more she tried to control the narrative, the more the truth came out. The fallout was immediate. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Emma's manipulation, her lies, and her treatment of the people closest to her. The wedding had become a spectacle, one that no one would forget. Emma's perfect day was slipping through her fingers, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Brandon didn't waste any time. He showed me the texts from Emma's group chat, and I felt my stomach drop. There it was, the cold, cruel truth. In her own words, Emma admitted that she seated me with Derek and Jessica on purpose. She laughed about it. "It'll be good content," she wrote. "Let's see how much drama we can get out of this wedding. Olivia will always be the emotional one, but she'll get over it. She always does." My heart shattered all over again. I'd been nothing but a pawn in Emma's game, just a way to fuel her influencer career. She'd used me for drama, for engagement, and I'd been too blind to see it. The lies, the manipulation, everything that had been building up to this moment came crashing down. I'd been giving her everything, and she'd been taking it all with a smile, using me to make her life look perfect while I was left to pick up the pieces. Brandon could see how devastated I was. I was shaking, holding the phone in my hands like it was on fire. "She did this to you, Olivia. She's not the person you thought she was," he said quietly, his voice filled with anger. I nodded, unable to speak. How could my sister do this to me? After everything we had been through, after all the years of being there for her, how could she treat me like this? But there was no time to dwell on it. The truth had come out, and now it was time to face the consequences. The very next day, Brandon called for a family meeting. He wanted to lay everything out in the open. At Linda's house, the tension was palpable. It was just us, Olivia, Emma, Linda, and Brandon. Brandon wasted no time. "This isn't just about the seating arrangement," he began, his voice calm but firm. "This is about how Emma has been treating Olivia for years, how she's been lying, manipulating, and using people for her own gain. It's time you all know the truth." Linda looked stunned, but she didn't say anything. Emma, however, tried to defend herself. "It's not like that. You don't understand." But Brandon cut her off. "No, Emma, I understand perfectly. You've lied to me, to your family, and most of all, to Olivia, and you've done it for years." The room was silent. Emma's facade was cracking, and I could see the anger in her eyes. She wanted to lash out, to deflect, but she couldn't hide behind her excuses anymore. And then it was my turn. For the first time in years, I finally spoke my truth. My voice was calm, almost too calm, but inside I was shaking. I've spent my whole life being there for everyone, being the one who picks up the pieces. I've given everything, sacrificed so much, but it was never enough. Not for Emma, not for anyone. I paused, looking at each of them. I'm done. I'm done being the family's emotional support system while no one even notices me. I'm done being invisible. My words hung in the air like a heavy weight. Emma didn't even try to apologize. She just looked away, her face red with frustration. The fallout from that conversation was swift. Brandon's parents, who had been misled by Emma's lies, demanded their $15,000 back. "We will not support a wedding built on manipulation," they said, their voices cold with disappointment. Emma's carefully curated image was gone, shattered by the truth. As the day went on, more people began to ask questions. They had seen the awkwardness, the tension, and now they wanted answers. Emma's perfect wedding had turned into a public spectacle. She posted an apology on Instagram, but it was no apology at all. "I'm sorry you felt that way," she wrote. "I never meant to hurt anyone." The comments were brutal. "This isn't an apology," one person wrote. "You're just playing the victim." Another said, "You need to take responsibility for your actions." Her followers, once her biggest supporters, were now turning on her. The walls Emma had built around herself were crumbling, and there was no way to stop it. The damage had been done. Emma's lies had cost her more than just money. It had cost her the respect of the people she cared about. And for me, the betrayal had come full circle. I had finally spoken up, and there was no going back. My decision to cut ties with Emma had been hard, but it was necessary. I wasn't going to let her use me any longer. Not for her wedding, not for her social media, not for anything. I was done. After everything that had happened, I knew it was time to focus on myself. The emotional toll of the past years, the neglect, the betrayal, the feeling of being invisible had taken its toll on me. It wasn't just about what Emma had done, but what I had allowed to happen to myself. I'd spent so much time trying to be everything for everyone, trying to please people who didn't even care about me, that I'd forgotten who I was. That's when I decided to take a step back and focus on healing. Therapy became my sanctuary. For the first time, I was able to unpack the layers of hurt I had been carrying. It wasn't easy, but little by little, I started to understand how I had allowed myself to be manipulated. With each session, I found myself letting go of the anger and the pain. I began setting boundaries, something I'd never done before. I wasn't a doormat anymore. And slowly, I started to see changes in myself. I was more confident at work, taking on new projects that challenged me and allowed me to grow professionally. My career started to take off, and for the first time in a long while, I felt proud of what I was accomplishing on my own, without needing to rely on anyone else's approval. I also started dating again, but this time I was careful. I didn't rush into anything. I took it slow, learning to trust myself first. The relationships I built from that point on were healthy, grounded in mutual respect and understanding. For the first time in my life, I realized that I didn't need to fix anyone else's problems to feel worthy of love. I had worth on my own. It was freeing. As my life began to blossom in new ways, I realized just how much I had been holding myself back for the sake of family. I had been carrying the weight of their expectations, trying to meet their needs while ignoring my own. But that was over now. I had a newfound sense of peace that I had never known before. One day, I sat down and wrote a letter to Emma. It wasn't something I had planned to do. It just came to me. In the letter, I told her that while I wasn't angry anymore, I was done. I explained that I had spent too many years sacrificing my happiness for the sake of our family, and I wasn't willing to do it anymore. I wasn't looking for closure, but I needed her to know that I was choosing myself now. "I'm done being your emotional support system," I wrote. "I've given you everything I had, and in return, you've used me. I don't hate you, Emma, but I can't keep doing this. I need to walk away." The letter symbolized my emotional freedom, the permanent distance I was placing between myself and the toxic dynamic I had been trapped in for so long. I wasn't asking for an apology. I was setting myself free. The next few months were some of the happiest I'd had in a long time. I was surrounded by people who truly cared about me, friends who supported me without expecting anything in return, people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could do for them. I began to embrace my own happiness. I wasn't constantly worried about what others thought of me. I was finally able to be myself. I spent weekends hiking, exploring new places, laughing with friends. I wasn't just existing anymore. I was living. And for the first time in my life, I felt at peace with who I was and where I was going. No more living in the shadows of my family's expectations. No more sacrificing myself for people who didn't see me. I was finally free, and it felt incredible. 6 months passed. I had found my peace, my footing in a life that was finally my own. The pain from the wedding had softened, and I had rebuilt myself into someone I was proud of. One evening, I opened my phone to see a message from Emma. "Olivia, can we talk? I'm ready to listen this time. I know I've hurt you, and I'm sorry. Can we try to fix things?" Her words were cold, empty. It wasn't an apology. It was an attempt to reset things on her terms. I stared at the message for a long time. I'd spent years of my life giving in to her, always being the one to forgive. But this time, something inside me clicked. I wasn't the same person who had walked out of that wedding. I had built a life for myself without her. I didn't need her to be whole. I realized, for the first time, that I didn't owe her anything. So I didn't respond. I didn't need to explain myself. I had nothing more to give. I thought about how far I'd come. I wasn't the girl who waited for approval or begged for respect. I had surrounded myself with people who truly cared about me, not for what I could do for them, but for who I was. My friends, the ones who lifted me up, never asked for anything in return. They showed up for me in ways I never expected. I wasn't alone anymore. The loneliness that had haunted me for so many years had been replaced by a sense of belonging. I had found my tribe. They understood me. They saw me. And most importantly, they valued me. I had learned to set boundaries, something I had never done before. I was no longer the person who let others dictate my worth. As I sat with my friends that evening, laughing and enjoying a moment of peace, I realized that I had made the right choice. I was finally living for myself, not for anyone else. I had stopped waiting for Emma's validation, stopped holding on to a toxic relationship out of obligation, and for the first time, I understood what it truly meant to love myself. The weight of my family's expectations no longer had control over me. I was free. I've learned a lot through this journey. Sometimes the hardest thing is to walk away from those who claim to love you but never show it. But I did it. I chose myself. And that was the most powerful thing I could have done. If you're watching this, think about where you are in your own life. Are there people you're holding on to because you think you have to? Are you setting boundaries that honor your own needs? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like mine.